I stare at the legal documents spread across the mahogany table, my hands trembling as I read the words that will destroy everything I thought I knew about my family, everything I believed about love and loyalty, and the bonds that are supposed to protect us from the cruelty of the outside world. Miss Chen, I'm afraid your brother Marcus has successfully contested your inheritance, the lawyer says, his voice clinical and detached as if he's discussing the weather instead of the systematic destruction of my entire life. The Wellington Family Trust Fund, all $50 million, has been transferred to his name effective immediately. My brother Marcus sits across from me in this prestigious law office in downtown Manhattan, 3 months before what should have been my 25th birthday celebration. And he's no longer the sweet little brother I raised after our parents died in that terrible car crash 8 years ago. No longer the Stanford MBA student I supported through every expense, every dream, every mistake he made along the way to becoming the man I thought would stand by my side forever. His eyes hold a coldness I've never seen before, a calculated emptiness that makes my stomach twist, with the realization that this stranger wearing my brother's face has been planning this moment for months, maybe years, while I trusted him completely. Beside him sits his girlfriend, Veronica Hastings, the real estate heiress who's been filling his head with poison for the past 2 years, her perfectly manicured fingers resting possessively on his arm while she watches my world crumble, with the satisfaction of someone who has orchestrated every devastating detail. She's beautiful in that cold, artificial way that money can buy, with platinum blonde hair and designer clothes that cost more than most people make in a year. But her smile is the cruelest thing I've ever seen, sharp and predatory and filled with triumph. Elena, you have to understand, Marcus says, finally meeting my eyes, but still not finding the courage to hold my gaze for more than a few seconds. You've been financially irresponsible. Spending money on that struggling art foundation, donating to charities instead of investing properly, acting like our family fortune is some kind of personal piggy bank for your bleeding heart causes. The family lawyers agree that I'm better suited to manage our inheritance, that I have the business education and practical mindset necessary to preserve our parents' legacy. But I know the truth now, the horrible truth that Professor Davidson tried to warn me about last month before his sudden heart attack took away the only person who could have saved me from this nightmare. I know about the gambling debts that Marcus has been hiding, the offshore accounts he's been funneling money into, the way Veronica has been coaching him to manipulate our family's legal loopholes with the help of her father's team of ruthless corporate lawyers. I know that my beloved mentor, Professor Davidson, tried to tell me that Marcus had been meeting with the Hastings family lawyers for months, building a case to steal everything our parents worked so hard to build, everything they died believing would keep their children safe and prosperous. The trust fund disappearance is only the beginning of my systematic destruction, I realize over the following 6 months as I watch Marcus transform into someone completely unrecognizable. Within weeks of gaining control of our inheritance, he fires me from the board of Wellington Enterprises, the manufacturing company our great-grandfather built from nothing with his own hands, and the dream of creating something lasting for his family. The board voted. Marcus lies smoothly, his new confidence obviously coached by Veronica and her father's influence. They feel a fresh perspective is needed, someone with modern business training who understands market dynamics. But I know Veronica's father, James Hastings, has been buying up shares through shell companies for years, that this hostile takeover was planned long before our parents' accident, that their deaths were probably not the random tragedy I've always believed them to be. I watch helplessly as Marcus liquidates everything that made our family who we were, selling our history piece by piece to fund his new lifestyle and pay off debts I'm only beginning to understand the scope of. The family estate in the Hamptons, where I spent every summer of my childhood, learning to sail and paint watercolors while my mother taught me about art history, and my father explained the shipping business that built our fortune, gets sold to a Hastings subsidiary for half its appraised value, under the pretense of streamlining family assets. Our mother's jewelry collection, the one she specifically left to me in her will with handwritten notes about which pieces to wear on my wedding day and which ones to save for my own daughters, gets auctioned off under Marcus's claimed authority as head of the family, the proceeds disappearing into accounts I have no access to. The art foundation I spent 3 years building to honor Professor Davidson's legacy and support struggling artists gets defunded and dissolved. The building we bought and renovated sold to developers who plan to turn it into luxury condominiums. All the artists we were supporting, the young people who reminded me so much of myself when I was starting my own journey into the art world, lose their grants and their workspace and their dreams because my brother decided their futures were worth less than his gambling debts. Professor Davidson's son Michael tries to help me fight the legal battles, spending his own inheritance on lawyers who promise they can reverse the trust fund transfer and restore my position in the family company. But the Hastings family has connections everywhere, judges and politicians and business leaders who owe them favors or fear their influence. Marcus changes the locks on our childhood home in Manhattan, the brownstone where we grew up and where every room holds memories of our parents, claiming I'm mentally unstable and need time to adjust to the new family dynamics. I'm forced to move into a studio apartment in Brooklyn, watching from the outside as my brother transforms into someone I don't recognize. Someone who wears $1,000 suits and drives sports cars and appears at society events with Veronica draped on his arm like a trophy wife in training. The newspapers call them the young Wellington heir and his socialite girlfriend, describing their romance as a fairy tale merger of two prominent New York families. While I become a footnote in my own family story, the troubled sister who couldn't handle family responsibility. The memory of Professor Davidson's final warning haunts me during these months of exile and legal battles that drain my savings and break my spirit. "Elena, my dear girl," he said in his office at Columbia University just 2 weeks before the heart attack that took him away from all of us who loved him, his usually vibrant voice weak from the heart condition he'd been hiding so we wouldn't worry about him. "I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because I may not have much time left to help you understand the danger your family is in." He pulled out a folder thick with documents, bank statements, and photographs that made my blood run cold when I saw what they revealed about the people I trusted most. "Your brother has been gambling, Elena. Not just casual weekend poker games with his college friends, but serious gambling with dangerous people who don't forgive debts or accept excuses. He owes money to underground casino operators, to loan sharks, to people who solve collection problems with violence." The photographs showed Marcus at illegal gambling establishments, signing papers with men in expensive suits whose faces I recognized from financial crime reports in the newspapers, men who destroyed families and businesses for profit. "The Hastings family isn't trying to help him," Professor Davidson continued, his academic mind still sharp even as his body failed him. "They're using his desperation to their advantage, exploiting his weakness to gain control of Wellington Enterprises. James Hastings has been planning this takeover for years, ever since your father refused to merge with Hastings Real Estate and threatened their expansion plans. He showed me documents that proved Marcus had forged my signatures on trust fund transfer paperwork, evidence that Veronica was married to someone else during her entire relationship with my brother, financial records that revealed the Hastings family's pattern of acquiring smaller companies through manipulation, debt leverage, and systematic destruction of family unity. I've been investigating them for months," Professor Davidson whispered, his eyes urgent with the knowledge that time was running out. "Building a case to protect you and expose their criminal enterprise. But my heart, I may not have enough time to finish what I started. Promise me you'll be careful, Elena. Promise me you won't trust anyone until you know their true intentions." I promised, but I didn't understand yet how deep the betrayal went, how carefully they had isolated me from every ally, every resource, every person who might help me fight back against their coordinated attack on everything my family had built. The final humiliation comes at the Wellington Foundation annual gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the event that was supposed to celebrate our family's centennial in business, but instead becomes my public execution. I arrive wearing my mother's vintage Chanel dress, the one piece of hers I managed to save before Marcus sold everything else, only to discover that he has rewritten the entire evening as Veronica's debut into Wellington Family Society and their official engagement announcement. The podium where I was supposed to give the keynote speech about our family's philanthropic legacy is occupied by Veronica, who announces their engagement and the exciting new direction for Wellington Enterprises with the confidence of someone who has already won a war I didn't know was being fought. She thanks me graciously for helping to transition the family leadership to the next generation, making it sound like I willingly stepped aside instead of being systematically betrayed and robbed by the people I loved most. I watch from the back of the room, invisible among the crowd of Manhattan's most influential families, as she unveils their plans to demolish the community center our mother funded, to close the scholarship program our father established for underprivileged children, to convert all our family's charitable initiatives into tax shelters for the Hastings real estate empire. Everything our parents cared about, everything they died believing would make the world a better place, gets reduced to line items in a business presentation. Marcus takes the microphone and delivers the killing blow with the practiced ease of someone who has rehearsed this moment many times. My sister Elena has struggled with mental health issues since our parents' death, he announces to the crowd of 300 people who control New York's business and social landscape. While we love her deeply and want the best for her recovery, the family has decided it's best for everyone if she takes time to focus on her healing. We ask for your patience and understanding during this difficult transition period. The room erupts in sympathetic murmurs, the kind of pitying sounds people make when they want to appear compassionate, but also want to distance themselves from potential scandal. I feel 300 pairs of eyes on me, some genuinely concerned, but most calculating how quickly they should cut ties with someone who's been publicly labeled as mentally unstable by her own family. I think about rushing the stage, about screaming the truth about Marcus's gambling and Veronica's manipulation, about demanding that someone listen to the evidence Professor Davidson died trying to gather, but I know how it will look. The unstable sister having a breakdown at her own family's gala, proving everything Marcus just said about my mental state. Instead, I walk out with whatever dignity I have left, hearing the whispers follow me through the museum's marble halls. Poor thing. Such a tragic family. At least Marcus seems stable. Thank God someone responsible is in charge now. The weight of their judgment and pity crushes whatever hope I had left for fighting back, for proving my innocence, for saving what remains of my family's true legacy. The final insult comes 6 months later, as an eviction notice slipped under my apartment door on a Tuesday morning in November. The kind of gray, cold day that matches the emptiness in my soul. Marcus has somehow convinced the building's owner, another connection to the Hastings family network that seems to control every aspect of my new reality, to terminate my lease for disturbing other tenants, though I've barely spoken to anyone in months and spend most of my time working 3 jobs just to afford the rent on this tiny studio apartment. I've been teaching art classes at a community college during the day, waitressing at a diner during the night shift, and cleaning office buildings on weekends, my hands raw from bleach and dishwater, my body exhausted from standing for 12 hours at a time, my spirit broken from the constant reminder that I've fallen so far from the privileged life I once took for granted. My phone rings constantly with reporters wanting to interview the fallen Wellington heiress, with lawyers offering to represent me for percentages I can't afford to pay, with old friends who want to know if the rumors about my breakdown are true or if there's some scandal they haven't heard about yet. I stop answering the phone, stop checking my email, stop hoping that someone will believe my version of events or care enough to help me fight back against the lies that have destroyed my reputation and my future. The news of Professor Davidson's will reading comes through a formal letter from his estate attorney. One final gift from the only person who ever truly understood the danger my family was in. Even in death, he tried to protect me, leaving me a small stipend and his collection of rare books about art history. The ones we used to discuss during our long conversations about beauty and legacy, and the responsibility that comes with inheriting something precious. But Marcus contests this inheritance too, claiming I'm too mentally unstable to manage any assets, that my erratic behavior and financial irresponsibility make me unsuitable to honor Professor Davidson's memory. The legal battle drags on for months, eating up the little money I have left from selling my mother's engagement ring, the one piece of jewelry I kept hidden from Marcus's systematic liquidation of our family's treasures. On December 15th, exactly 1 year after Marcus first filed the trust fund transfer paperwork that started this nightmare, I sit in my empty apartment surrounded by eviction notices and legal bills, holding the final rejection letter from the appeals court. They've upheld every decision against me, validated every lie Marcus told about my mental state, confirmed that I have no legal standing to challenge anything he's done to our family's legacy. I have 48 hours to vacate the apartment, $300 in my bank account, and nowhere to go. I think about Professor Davidson's words about family loyalty, about how the people who truly love us protect us even when it's difficult, even when it costs them something precious. I think about my mother's dreams for Wellington Enterprises, about the community programs my father built to help struggling families, about how they died, believing their children would carry on their values and protect the vulnerable people they cared about. I think about how Marcus used to cry when he had nightmares after our parents died, how I held him and promised I'd always protect him, how I gave up my own dreams of studying art in Paris so I could stay home and help him through his grief. I remember teaching him to drive in our father's old Mercedes, helping him with his college applications, being so proud when he got accepted to Stanford with the business degree our parents always wanted him to pursue. The bottle of sleeping pills sits on my kitchen counter, the ones the doctor prescribed when I couldn't sleep through the anxiety attacks that started after Marcus's betrayal, when every sound in the night made me afraid that someone was coming to hurt me or evict me or serve me with more legal papers. The label says, "Take one as needed for sleep," but I'm holding the entire bottle. 30 pills that could end the constant pain of losing everything I ever loved, everyone I ever trusted. I swallow the pills with a glass of wine, the cheap kind that's all I can afford now, lying down on the air mattress that's the only furniture I have left after selling everything else to pay lawyers who couldn't save me. As consciousness fades, I whisper to the empty room, "I'm sorry, Professor Davidson. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep fighting. I'm sorry I couldn't save our family's legacy or protect the people you cared about." The last thing I remember is the sound of sirens in the distance, too far away to save me, and the bitter irony that I'm dying alone in a Brooklyn studio apartment while Marcus celebrates his wedding to Veronica at the Plaza Hotel with my family's money, surrounded by people who believe he's a hero for managing his troubled sister's mental health crisis. Then I open my eyes and realize I'm 18 years old again, sitting in the passenger seat of Professor Davidson's car as he drives me home from my Columbia University acceptance interview, alive and healthy and completely unaware of the nightmare that awaits his family in 7 years. "Elena, are you all right?" Professor Davidson asks, his voice exactly as I remember it, vibrant and concerned and wonderfully, impossibly alive. His hands steady on the steering wheel, his face unlined by the stress and illness that will consume his final years. "You look like you've seen a ghost, my dear." I stare at my reflection in the passenger window, my heart pounding with the impossible reality of what's happening to me, as I take in the face that's 7 years younger, unmarked by the sleepless nights and constant anxiety that aged me in my previous life. The smooth skin without the stress lines that came from working 3 jobs and fighting legal battles I couldn't win. My hands are soft again, without the calluses from cleaning office buildings and washing dishes. My hair thick and glossy instead of thinning from malnutrition and the kind of stress that destroys everything beautiful about youth. "What's today's date?" I whisper, though I already know the answer with the certainty that comes from living through this exact moment before, though in my previous life I was excited about college and completely naive about the dangers that surrounded my family. "March 15th, 2018, he replies, concern deepening in his voice, as he glances at me while navigating the familiar streets of Manhattan. "Elena, you're scaring me. Should I take you to the hospital? You look like you're in shock." March 15th, 2018. Exactly 7 years and 9 months before I died in that Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by eviction notices and empty pill bottles. 2 weeks before our parents' car accident that wasn't really an accident at all. 3 months before Marcus starts his freshman year at Stanford. 4 years before he meets Veronica Hastings. 6 years before Professor Davidson's heart attack that takes away the only person who ever understood the scope of the conspiracy against my family. And I have the chance to save everyone, to prevent every tragedy, to protect every person I failed to protect in my previous life. "I'm fine," I tell him, though my voice shakes with the weight of knowledge that feels too enormous for my 18-year-old body to contain. Just overwhelmed about the interview, about everything changing so fast. "Professor Davidson, can I ask you something that might sound strange?" "Of course, my dear. You know you can talk to me about anything." "Do you know anything about the Hastings family, James Hastings specifically, and his business practices?" His hands tighten on the steering wheel, and I see recognition flash across his face, the same expression he'll wear years from now when he discovers the depth of their criminal enterprise. "Elena, why are you asking about them? Has someone mentioned the Hastings family to you?" "Not exactly," I say carefully, knowing I can't explain about my previous life without sounding completely insane. I've just been reading about corporate takeovers and family businesses, about how some companies use debt and manipulation to acquire smaller enterprises. The Hastings name keeps coming up in the articles I've found. Elena, he says slowly, pulling over to the side of the road so he can give me his full attention. The Hastings family has been trying to acquire smaller manufacturing companies for years, using methods that walk the line between aggressive business practices and criminal conspiracy. They target family businesses with long histories and strong reputations, but maybe not the most modern corporate protections. Why are you asking about them? I close my eyes and feel the ghost of my future memories, the weight of 7 years of betrayal and loss, the knowledge of exactly how they'll destroy my family if I don't find a way to stop them. Because I think they're going to try to destroy my family, and I need to know how to protect everyone I love. The drive to our family's mansion passes in contemplative silence, Professor Davidson clearly processing what I've told him, while I stare out the window at the familiar streets of my childhood, the neighborhood where I felt safe and loved and completely unaware of the predators circling my family's wealth and happiness. Every landmark we pass reminds me of innocence I can never reclaim, but also of the power I now possess to change everything that went wrong. I stand in the doorway of our family's study that evening, watching my parents review business documents at their matching mahogany desks, alive and healthy, and completely unaware that they have 2 weeks left to live if I don't find a way to save them. My mother looks up and smiles, the same warm expression I've been mourning for 7 years, her face free from the worry lines that never had a chance to develop. "How was the Columbia interview, sweetheart?" "Perfect," I say, because in my previous life it was perfect, leading to my acceptance with a full scholarship to study art history, which led to my friendship with Professor Davidson, which eventually led to everything else, both beautiful and tragic. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something important, something that might sound paranoid but could save our family from terrible danger." They exchange glances, my father setting down his financial reports to give me his full attention. The same serious focus he brought to every family discussion. The respect for my intelligence that I took for granted until I lost it forever. "What is it, Elena? You look very serious for someone who just had a successful college interview." I take a deep breath, knowing that everything depends on making them believe me without revealing the impossible truth about my rebirth. I want to learn about the family business, really learn it, not just the ceremonial parts that daughters usually get taught. I want to understand our legal protections, our competitor relationships, our financial structure, and most importantly, our vulnerabilities to hostile takeovers. My mother raises an eyebrow, clearly surprised by this sudden interest in corporate strategy. "Elena, you've never shown interest in Wellington Enterprises before? You've always been focused on art and philanthropy, on the creative and charitable aspects of our family's legacy." "I still am," I say quickly, "but I realize I need to understand the business side if I want to be effective in philanthropy long term. And I want to make sure our family is protected against the kind of corporate attacks that have destroyed other old New York families." My father leans forward, intrigued by this mature perspective from his 18-year-old daughter. "What do you know about corporate takeovers, Elena? Where did this concern come from?" "I've been doing research." I lie smoothly, drawing on knowledge gained through 7 years of bitter experience. Professor Davidson mentioned that several established family businesses have been lost in the past decade through manipulation and systematic financial pressure. Companies like the Morrison manufacturing business, the Chen Electronics Company, the Rodriguez shipping enterprise, all targeted by larger corporations that used family conflicts and debt leverage to force buyouts. "That's surprisingly sophisticated thinking for someone your age," my father says, clearly impressed. "Most 18-year-olds don't worry about corporate vulnerabilities or succession planning." "Maybe I just matured faster because of losing you and Mom so young," I say, then freeze as I realize what I've just revealed. "Losing us?" my mother asks, confusion and concern flooding her voice. "Elena, what do you mean? We're right here." "I mean, if something happened to you," I stammer, trying to cover my mistake. "If there was an accident or something unexpected, I want to make sure Marcus and I would be prepared to protect the family business and continue your legacy." My parents exchange another look, this one tinged with the kind of parental worry that comes from hearing your child express fears about mortality and responsibility that seem too heavy for their young shoulders. All right, my father says finally. This summer, before you start Columbia, you can intern at Wellington Enterprises. Learn the real operations, not just the public relations and charitable foundation work. If you're serious about understanding corporate protections, I'll teach you everything I know. And I want to review our legal protections immediately. I continue, pressing my advantage. Estate planning, trust fund structures, succession protocols, security measures for family members. Elena, my mother says slowly, is there something specific you're worried about? Some threat you've heard about that you're not telling us? I think about the car accident that will kill them in 2 weeks, about Marcus's gambling addiction that's already starting at Stanford, about Veronica Hastings, who's probably already being groomed by her father to seduce and manipulate my brother, about all the ways my family will be destroyed if I don't act quickly and decisively. I just want to make sure we're prepared for anything, I say. Family businesses are targets, especially successful ones with long histories and valuable assets. We should be smarter about protecting ourselves before someone tries to hurt us. The next morning, I arrive at my father's office at Wellington Enterprises headquarters at 7 a.m., dressed in a tailored suit instead of my usual artistic flowing clothes, carrying a briefcase instead of my sketch pad, my entire demeanor transformed by the knowledge of what I need to accomplish. His assistant, Patricia, nearly drops her coffee when she sees me walking through the executive floor reception area. Elena, what are you doing here so early? And why are you dressed like a young executive? I have a meeting with my father about learning the business operations. I say calmly, my voice carrying the confidence of someone who has already lived through years of corporate battles and emerged stronger. Could you pull the files on all our major competitors and any recent merger or acquisition attempts in our industry? I'm particularly interested in companies that specialize in hostile takeovers of family businesses. Patricia stares at me like I've announced I'm planning to join the circus, clearly struggling to reconcile this serious young woman with the dreamy art student who last week asked if she could use the company conference room to display her latest paintings for the employees to enjoy. Of course, she says slowly, professional training overriding her surprise. Anything specific you're looking for in terms of takeover strategies? Companies that specialize in hostile acquisitions of family businesses, particularly those involving real estate expansion or vertical integration strategies. I want to understand their methods, their target selection criteria, and their success rates. My father emerges from his corner office, stopping short when he sees me standing at Patricia's desk, reviewing what appear to be corporate intelligence reports. Elena, I thought we agreed you'd start the internship this summer after graduation. I changed my mind, I say, meeting his eyes with the steady gaze of someone who has learned that time is the most precious resource we have. I want to start now, part-time around my high school schedule, but I want to understand our vulnerabilities before I graduate and leave for college. He studies my face, probably trying to reconcile this determined young woman with the daughter who last week was more concerned with her upcoming art show than anything related to business strategy or corporate security. What brought on this sudden urgency about corporate vulnerabilities and family business protection? I've been thinking about legacy, I say, which is true in ways he could never understand. Our family built this company over 4 generations, survived the Depression and 2 world wars and countless economic challenges. I want to make sure it survives to see the 5th generation, and that means understanding the threats we face in the modern business environment. The 5th generation, he repeats thoughtfully. You mean when you and Marcus take over operations? I nod, though in my heart I know Marcus will never be part of Wellington Enterprises again. Not after what he chose in my previous life. Not after the betrayals and gambling debts and willingness to sacrifice family loyalty for personal gain. Patricia, my father says, his voice carrying the decisive tone that built our family's business empire. Clear my morning schedule. Elena and I need to have a comprehensive discussion about company structure, succession planning, and defensive strategies against corporate predators. As we walk into his office, I catch my reflection in the glass doors and see that something fundamental has changed in my eyes since my rebirth. The naive trust is gone, replaced by the hard-earned wisdom of someone who has already lost everything once and refuses to let it happen again. I won't lose it again. I promise silently to the memory of Professor Davidson, and the ghost of my parents' future deaths. This time, I know who my enemies are, and I'm going to destroy them before they can hurt anyone I love. The car accident that killed my parents in my previous life wasn't random. It was a carefully orchestrated assassination disguised as mechanical failure, planned by James Hastings after my father refused his merger proposal and threatened to expose the Hastings family's pattern of acquiring family businesses through systematic criminal conspiracy. I know this because Professor Davidson discovered the evidence years later. The tampered brake lines. The insurance investigator who was paid to rule it accidental. The convenient timing just days after Hastings Real Estate made their final, insulting offer for Wellington Enterprises. This time, I'm ready for them, armed with 7 years of bitter knowledge about their methods and the determination to protect my family that comes from having already watched them die once. Dad, I've been researching corporate security protocols for family business executives, I say during our second strategy meeting, spreading newspaper clippings across his desk with the methodical precision of someone building a legal case. Did you know that several CEOs of established family companies have experienced suspicious accidents after rejecting merger offers from larger corporations? He frowns, his business instincts warring with his natural inclination to trust in coincidence rather than conspiracy. Elena, that sounds like paranoid thinking. Business competition can be aggressive, but actual violence is extremely rare. Maybe, I say, pulling out the additional research I've carefully compiled over the past week. But look at these patterns, Dad. The Morrison Family Manufacturing Company. The patriarch died in a car accident exactly 2 weeks after rejecting a Hastings real estate merger offer. The Chen Electronics business. Mysterious factory fire just 3 days after turning down a buyout proposal. The Rodriguez Shipping Company. The founder drowned in a boating accident during what the newspapers called ongoing merger negotiations. My father studies the clippings with the careful attention he brings to all business analysis, his analytical mind beginning to see the patterns that are invisible to people who haven't lived through the consequences of ignoring them. These could all be coincidences, Elena. Corporate executives face risks, but systematic targeting would it be exactly what a family like the Hastings would do if they thought they could get away with it? I interrupt, knowing I need to push him toward the truth without revealing how I know these details. Dad, what would it cost to upgrade our personal security? Professional drivers, armored vehicles, varied travel routes, enhanced protection for family members? Elena, you're talking about the kind of security measures used by heads of state or organized crime figures. We're a manufacturing company, not a military operation. We're a target, I say firmly, letting the weight of my future knowledge color my voice with absolute certainty. Rich, successful, independent, and unwilling to sell our family legacy to corporate predators, that makes us dangerous to people like James Hastings. Within a month, I've convinced my parents to hire professional drivers for all family transportation, to install advanced security systems in our homes and offices, to vary their travel routes and schedules with the kind of unpredictability that makes planning accidents almost impossible. When James Hastings makes his merger approach in early April, exactly as he did in my previous life, my parents are protected by precautions that didn't exist before my rebirth. The merger meeting goes exactly as I remember, with Hastings presenting his lowball offer disguised as generous terms, emphasizing the risks of remaining independent in a consolidating market, while his cold eyes assess my father's reaction, like a predator calculating the best angle of attack. My father rejects the proposal with the same polite firmness he showed before, maintaining the dignity and principles that made me proud to be a Wellington. But this time, when Hastings people try to arrange the accident 3 days later, they find a professional driver behind the wheel instead of my father, armored glass instead of standard windows, a GPS tracking system that alerts our security team when the car deviates from planned routes. The brake failure that was supposed to send my parents off the Whitestone Bridge instead affects an empty car driven by a professional stunt driver who walks away unharmed, while the incident gets reported as a mechanical failure that our private security team meticulously documents as evidence for future legal proceedings. My parents are shaken but alive, and they finally understand that their daughter's paranoia about corporate security was actually life-saving intuition based on a very real threat to our family's survival. With my parents safe, I turn my attention to Marcus, knowing that in my previous life he started gambling during his sophomore year at Stanford after Veronica introduced him to her wealthy friend circle, and the underground casino scene that would eventually destroy him. This time, I want him to gamble. Want him to fall so deep into debt that when I finally cut him off, his desperation will expose everyone who's been manipulating him. And I start by subtly encouraging his worst impulses, playing the role of the supportive sister while carefully feeding his growing sense of entitlement and his need to prove himself among Stanford's wealthy student population. When he calls home complaining about the expensive social life and his inability to keep up with classmates who have unlimited spending money, I'm the one who suggests he use his trust fund access to invest in experiences that will help his networking and future business prospects. Elena's right, I hear him tell his roommate during a Christmas break visit home, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who believes he's making smart strategic decisions. These aren't just social expenses, they're business development opportunities. The connections I'm making at these poker games will be worth millions in future deals. By his sophomore year, Marcus is exactly where he was in my previous timeline. Except this time, I'm monitoring his every move through private investigators who document every poker game, every casino visit, every IOU he signs with people whose business model depends on desperate young men from wealthy families. I have photographs, video recordings, and financial documentation of everything he does, building a comprehensive case against everyone who's exploiting him. When Veronica Hastings enters his life in spring 2020, I'm ready for her too, knowing she's not the struggling art student she pretends to be, but the daughter of James Hastings, specifically trained to seduce and manipulate Marcus into betraying our family's interests. I let their relationship develop exactly as it did before, watching through my investigators as she coaches him on legal loopholes, introduces him to offshore banking, and gradually convinces him that I'm unfit to inherit the family business. The key difference is that this time, I'm building an ironclad case against all of them, documenting every forged signature Marcus makes under Veronica's guidance, every illegal gambling debt, every conversation about stealing family assets, every meeting with Hastings' family lawyers who are helping them plan the systematic destruction of Wellington Enterprises. By Marcus's graduation in 2022, he owes $1.2 million to various creditors, exactly as he did in my previous life, his desperation making him vulnerable to every manipulation Veronica and her father can devise. But this time, when he comes to me asking for help accessing the trust fund early to pay his debts, I'm ready with my own carefully planned manipulation. Of course I'll help you, I tell him, signing the papers that give him access to his portion of the inheritance while maintaining the warm, trusting expression that made me such an easy victim in my previous life. Family comes first, Marcus. I'll always be here to support you. He doesn't know that I've already moved the real family assets into accounts he can't touch, that the $50 million trust fund he's about to gamble away is actually backed by Hastings' family money, a detail buried so deep in legal documentation that neither Marcus nor Veronica understand what they're really stealing. I let Marcus take everything he thinks belongs to our family, and I watch him gamble it all away in a spectacular 6-month spiral that leaves him owing money to people even the Hastings family can't protect him from. The gala that destroyed me in my previous life becomes my revenge in this one. But instead of being the victim publicly humiliated by my brother's betrayal, I orchestrate the downfall of everyone who conspired against my family with the methodical precision of someone who has already lived through their victory once. I arrive at the Metropolitan Museum of Art wearing a custom Valentino gown that costs more than most people make in a year. Diamonds that belong to my great-grandmother sparkling at my throat and wrists. My confidence radiating the power of someone who has already won a war that my enemies don't yet realize they've lost. The same crowd that whispered about my mental breakdown in my previous timeline now murmurs admiringly about the youngest Wellington's remarkable business acumen and her successful expansion of the family's art world connections. Marcus and Veronica enter an hour later, both clearly stressed despite their attempts to appear triumphant, their designer clothes and practiced smiles, unable to hide the desperation that comes from owing millions of dollars to people who collect debts through violence. In my previous life, this was their engagement celebration and my public humiliation. In this timeline, it's the night their entire world collapses in front of Manhattan's most influential families. Ladies and gentlemen, I announce from the podium, my voice carrying clearly through the museum's soaring spaces. I want to thank you all for joining us for this very special evening. Tonight, we're not just celebrating the Wellington Foundation's centennial and our family's commitment to supporting the arts. We're exposing a criminal conspiracy that has threatened our family and our industry for years. The room falls silent, with the sudden tension that comes when people realize they're witnessing something far more dramatic than the typical charity gala speeches they're accustomed to hearing. In the back, I see Marcus's face go white as he realizes something has gone very wrong with their carefully planned timeline for seizing control of Wellington Enterprises. 3 years ago, I continue, my voice steady with the confidence that comes from having survived these people's worst attacks once already. My family became the target of a sophisticated criminal enterprise designed to steal our company through manipulation, fraud, attempted murder, and the systematic corruption of family relationships. Tonight, with the help of the FBI's white-collar crime division, we're bringing the perpetrators to justice. The museum's main entrance doors open, and federal agents enter in coordinated formation, moving directly toward Marcus and Veronica's table with the purposeful stride of law enforcement officers executing carefully planned arrests. But they don't stop there. They also approach James Hastings, who's been sitting with the other real estate moguls in confident expectation that his crimes could never be traced back to him through the layers of shell companies and intermediary connections he's used to hide his involvement. Marcus Wellington, the lead agent announces, his voice carrying the authority of federal law enforcement. You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit corporate theft, and violation of federal racketeering statutes. Veronica Hastings, another agent says, approaching the woman who destroyed my previous life with calculated seduction and manipulation. You're under arrest for identity fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and violation of federal racketeering statutes. The third agent approaches James Hastings with the satisfaction of someone who has been building this case for years. James Hastings, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, and operating a criminal enterprise designed to defraud family businesses. The gala erupts in chaos as Manhattan's elite watch the dramatic arrests of 3 people they thought they knew and respected. The kind of shocking reversal that will be discussed in society circles for years to come, but I'm not finished with my revenge, not yet. The evidence will show. I continue speaking into the microphone, my voice carrying over the commotion of shocked conversations and camera flashes from journalists who smell the story of the decade. That James Hastings orchestrated a multi-year plan to acquire Wellington Enterprises through the systematic destruction of my family. This plan included the attempted murder of my parents through automotive sabotage, the corruption of my brother through gambling debt and romantic manipulation, and the theft of millions of dollars in family assets. I gesture to the screens positioned around the room, which begin displaying the photographs, financial records, and video evidence I've been collecting for 4 years. The crowd sees Marcus signing forged documents under Veronica's guidance, Hastings meeting with the men who sabotaged my parents' car, Veronica coaching Marcus on how to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal my inheritance. My brother has gambled away $50 million over the past 6 months, I announce, watching Marcus's face crumble as he realizes the scope of his betrayal has been documented and will be used against him in federal court. Money he believed belonged to our family trust fund. In reality, those funds were provided by the Hastings family as payment for corporate espionage and theft. Every dollar he lost, every debt he incurred has been carefully documented as evidence of this criminal conspiracy. Marcus stands up at his table, his face desperate with the panic of someone who finally understands how completely he's been manipulated and used. Elena, you don't understand. I was trying to protect the family. Veronica showed me evidence that you were mismanaging everything, that you were going to destroy our parents' legacy. Shut up, Marcus, Veronica hisses, but it's too late for damage control, too late for anything except the consequences they've earned through years of criminal conspiracy. I have recordings of every conversation, I tell the crowd, my voice filled with the satisfaction of justice finally served, including the ones where Veronica admits her real identity as James Hastings' daughter and explains her father's long-term plans for acquiring our company through family destruction. I have evidence of the attempted murder of my parents, documented proof of the systematic corruption of my brother, and complete financial records of the planned theft of Wellington Enterprises. as the federal agents lead the three conspirators away in handcuffs, their designer clothes and privileged backgrounds offering no protection against the weight of federal criminal charges, I deliver my final statement to the assembled crowd. Wellington Enterprises will continue to operate as an independent family business, stronger than ever, because we've learned to protect ourselves against those who would exploit family loyalty for criminal gain. The applause that follows is thunderous, but I feel no celebration. Only the heavy satisfaction of justice served and the profound sadness of watching my brother's face as he realizes how completely he's been used and how thoroughly he's destroyed the family relationships that once meant everything to him. While orchestrating Marcus's downfall and the destruction of the Hastings family's criminal enterprise, I've been building relationships with people I overlooked in my previous life, connections that will form the foundation of my new future. The most important of these is Michael Davidson, Professor Davidson's son, who, in my previous timeline, only became close to me during my final desperate year when he tried to help me fight legal battles I couldn't win. In this timeline, I seek him out immediately after my rebirth, using my friendship with his father as an opening to a deeper relationship built on mutual respect and shared values, rather than the desperate circumstances that brought us together before. Michael is everything Marcus pretended to be: loyal, intelligent, genuinely committed to protecting the things he cares about, and incapable of betraying someone who trusts him. "You've changed," Michael observes during one of our weekly dinners in late 2021, his analytical mind picking up on differences he can't quite identify. "When I first met you 3 years ago, you were this dreamy art student who trusted everyone and saw the best in every situation. Now you're like a chess master who sees 20 moves ahead." We're sitting in his apartment near Columbia University, surrounded by his father's books and artwork. The space that feels more like home to me than any place in my previous life because it's filled with genuine warmth and intellectual curiosity, rather than the calculating manipulation that characterized my relationships with Marcus and his circle. "Maybe I just grew up faster than most people," I say, which is true in ways he could never understand. "Or maybe I learned that naive trust is a luxury people like us can't afford when there are predators willing to exploit family loyalty for personal gain." Michael studies my face across the candlelit table, his dark eyes reflecting the intelligence and integrity that made his father such an exceptional mentor and friend. "Elena, I need you to know that whatever happened to make you this way, whatever you're protecting yourself from, I'm on your side. I've been on your side since the day my father introduced us, and nothing you could tell me would change that." The confession hangs in the air between us, weighted with the sincerity that I learned to recognize and value through the bitter experience of its absence in my previous life. In that timeline, I was so focused on Marcus's betrayal and Veronica's manipulation that I never noticed Michael's quiet, consistent support, the way he attended every one of my art shows, remembered every detail I shared about my family's history, and stood by me even when my reputation was destroyed by public accusations of mental instability. "I know," I tell him, reaching across the table to take his hand, marveling at how different this feels from any relationship in my previous life. In my past experience with relationships, I learned that the people who love you quietly, consistently, without demanding anything in return, are worth more than the ones who love you loudly but conditionally. "Your past experience?" he asks, clearly confused by my strange phrasing, but too respectful to press for details I'm not ready to share. "With my family dynamics," I clarify quickly, not wanting to reveal the impossible truth about my rebirth. "I've learned through watching Marcus that dramatic declarations of loyalty often mean less than consistent actions over time." Michael's thumb traces across my knuckles with the gentle affection of someone who has been waiting patiently for the right moment to express feelings he's held for years. "Elena, I've been waiting for you to see me as more than Professor Davidson's son or your father's academic connection. I've been waiting for you to trust me enough to let me help you with whatever you're really planning." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know you're orchestrating something significant regarding Marcus and the Hastings family. I've seen the private investigators you've hired, the legal consultations you've been having, the way you've been maneuvering pieces on a board that none of us can see completely. I don't know what they did to hurt you or threaten your family, but I want to help you make them face the consequences of their actions." The honesty in his voice breaks something open in my chest. The careful emotional barriers I've maintained since my rebirth, cracking under the weight of genuine care and support. In my previous life, I was so afraid of being betrayed again that I never let anyone close enough to truly help me, never trusted anyone enough to share the burden of fighting back against people who seemed untouchable. Michael, I say, making a decision that would have terrified me in my previous timeline. What if I told you that everything you think you know about the past 4 years is going to change dramatically? That Marcus isn't the person we thought he was? That my family has been under systematic attack by a criminal enterprise? And that I've been building a federal case to destroy everyone who tried to hurt us? I'd say that sounds exactly like the Elena Wellington I've been falling in love with, he replies without hesitation. Brilliant, strategic, protective of the people she cares about, and strong enough to fight back against anyone who threatens her family's legacy. Falling in love with? He squeezes my hand, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who has thought carefully about his feelings and chosen his words with intention. I've been in love with you since the day you gave that speech at my father's memorial service about art as legacy and the responsibility we have to continue the work of people we admire. You talked about how great work outlasts the people who create it, how the best way to honor someone is to protect and expand their mission. That's when I knew you weren't just beautiful, you were extraordinary. The kiss that follows tastes like redemption, like the future I thought I'd lost forever, like the possibility that some things can be saved and rebuilt even after they've been completely destroyed by betrayal and criminal conspiracy. 6 months after the federal arrest that dismantled the Hastings family's criminal enterprise and sent Marcus to prison for his role in the conspiracy against our family, Wellington Enterprises is stronger than it's ever been in its century-long history. With the threat eliminated and Marcus's embezzlement schemes exposed through federal investigation, we've not only recovered our stolen assets but also acquired several of the companies James Hastings was forced to liquidate to pay his mounting legal fees and criminal restitution. I stand in my new office, the CEO suite that my father insisted I take over after my exceptional demonstration of business acumen, strategic thinking, and unwavering family loyalty. Looking out over the Manhattan skyline and thinking about the empire I've built from the ashes of my previous life's complete failure. The view from these windows encompasses the city where I once died alone and forgotten, transformed now into the foundation of a business dynasty that will protect families like ours from predators like the Hastings for generations to come. The Wellington Foundation has expanded far beyond our original philanthropic focus to include a cutting-edge corporate security division that helps other family businesses protect themselves against the kind of systematic attacks we survived through preparation and strategic planning. Professor Davidson's son Michael runs our research division, investigating patterns of corporate manipulation and developing early warning systems that can identify vulnerable companies before criminals target them for systematic destruction. Most importantly, I've learned to trust my instincts and value the people who prove their loyalty through consistent actions, rather than dramatic words or family connections that can be exploited by people with criminal intentions. My assistant Patricia, who stood by our family through the entire scandal and never believed the lies about my mental instability, now manages our security protocols and trains other family businesses in protective measures. The private investigators who helped me build the federal case against the Hastings conspiracy have become permanent consultants, extending their protection to other families who face similar threats. Miss Wellington, Patricia announces through the intercom, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who has watched me grow from a naive 18-year-old into a formidable business leader. Mr. Davidson is here for your lunch meeting. I smile, knowing that Michael and I moved far beyond business meetings months ago, when our professional collaboration blossomed into the kind of love story that my parents always hoped I'd find. Today we're finalizing plans for our own announcement, one that will be much more joyful than the last major revelation at a Wellington family event. Are you sure you want to do this today? Michael asks, his nervous energy evident as he adjusts his tie for the 10th time since arriving at our family estate in the Hamptons. Your parents have only known about us as a couple for 3 months. Maybe we should wait until they've had more time to adjust to the idea. They've known you for 5 years, I remind him, straightening his collar with the steady hands of someone who has learned to value genuine relationships over dramatic gestures. And they've seen how you stood by our family through everything with Marcus and the federal investigation. Trust me, they're not going to be surprised by this development. We're standing on the terrace of our family estate, the same place where Marcus announced his engagement to Veronica in my previous life, though today the setting will host a celebration of real love instead of calculated manipulation. Michael will ask my father for permission to marry me, a tradition that seems quaint in modern times but means everything to a family that's learned to value genuine commitment over flashy declarations that hide criminal intentions. Besides, I add, taking his hands and marveling again at how different this feels from any relationship in my previous life. My father already considers you part of the family. Last week, he asked if you'd be interested in taking the Davidson name off the research division and making it official as Wellington Davidson Industries. Michael's eyes widen with surprise and gratitude. He wants to merge our family's legacies officially. He wants to honor your father's memory and acknowledge what you've brought to our company's mission. But mostly, he wants to make sure I'm happy, and he knows you make me happier than I've ever been in my entire life. With Michael, I don't have to hide my intelligence or pretend to be the naive art student I was in my previous timeline. He loves me because I'm strategic and protective, not despite these qualities that Marcus and Veronica tried to use against me. He admires my business acumen and supports my charitable work without trying to control or manipulate either aspect of my life. Ready to build our future together? I ask. Ready, he says, and we walk inside to ask my parents for their blessing on a marriage that will unite two families committed to protecting others from the kind of predators we've defeated. The newspaper clipping on my desk tells the story I've been waiting to read for 5 years. Former real estate mogul James Hastings sentenced to 25 years for racketeering and attempted murder. The article mentions that his daughter, Veronica, received a 15-year sentence for her role in the conspiracy to defraud family businesses, while Marcus accepted a plea bargain for 5 years in federal prison in exchange for his testimony against the Hastings family's criminal enterprise. Marcus writes to me from federal prison occasionally, letters full of apologies and explanations for his betrayal that I read, but don't answer because some wounds heal better without constant reopening. He'll be eligible for parole in 3 years, but he'll never be welcome in the Wellington family business again, and he'll never have access to family assets that he proved he couldn't be trusted to protect. Some betrayals can be forgiven, but never forgotten, especially when they involved attempting to destroy everything our parents built and believed in. The Hastings real estate empire collapsed entirely, their assets liquidated to pay restitution to the numerous families they targeted over the years through systematic manipulation and criminal conspiracy. Veronica will emerge from prison with nothing but a criminal record and the reputation as someone who seduced innocent men to steal their family fortunes for her father's business empire. Justice, I've learned through this experience, doesn't always feel as immediately satisfying as revenge might, but it lasts longer and protects more people from future harm. The wedding that takes place in St. Patrick's Cathedral, where my parents were married 40 years ago, is everything my previous life's funeral wasn't. Filled with people who genuinely love us, celebrating a future built on truth and trust instead of manipulation and criminal conspiracy. Professor Davidson would be proud to see his son marrying the student he always believed had extraordinary potential, carrying on his legacy of protecting knowledge and supporting those who need guidance. As Michael slides the wedding ring onto my finger, I think about the professor who first introduced us, whose wisdom guided me through both lifetimes, and whose memory continues to inspire our work, protecting other families from corporate predators. The foundation we've built in his name will help countless families avoid the kind of systematic destruction that the Hastings enterprise inflicted on so many innocent people. 6 months later, when I tell Michael about the pregnancy during a quiet dinner at home, his joy is so complete and overwhelming that I finally understand what Professor Davidson meant when he said the best legacy is the love that survives us and grows into something even more beautiful. Our children will grow up knowing they're protected, not just by wealth, but by parents who understand that real power comes from wisdom, loyalty, and the courage to choose what's right over what's easy. 5 years after my rebirth, I sit in Professor Davidson's old office at Columbia University, now converted into a scholarship center that bears his name and supports students from struggling families who want to pursue higher education. The kind of program that might have helped Marcus make better choices if he'd been willing to accept guidance instead of seeking shortcuts through gambling and manipulation. Michael brings our 2-year-old daughter to visit me at work, and she toddles around the office touching books and artwork with the same curious hands her grandfather would have loved to guide toward knowledge and beauty. She'll grow up knowing she's protected not just by family wealth, but by parents who understand that true security comes from building something positive rather than destroying others. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus, now released from prison and working at a small accounting firm under a different name to avoid the scandal that still follows the Wellington family betrayal case, ever thinks about the family fortune he gambled away, or the sister he betrayed for people who never cared about him. But mostly, I don't think about him at all because my energy is focused on building rather than mourning what was lost. My rebirth taught me that the best revenge isn't just destroying your enemies. It's building something so beautiful and strong and protective that their absence becomes irrelevant to your happiness and success. Wellington Enterprises thrives under leadership that values integrity over profit margins. The Davidson Research Institute protects dozens of family businesses every year from corporate predators who use the Hastings playbook. Michael and I are expecting our second child, a son we plan to name after Professor Davidson. The legacy of wisdom and protection continues through both our work and our love. And every morning when I wake up next to my husband in our home filled with laughter and safety and the knowledge that we're building something worthwhile together, I remember that second chances aren't just about fixing what went wrong. They're about discovering what was always meant to go right when you have the wisdom to recognize real love and the courage to protect it against anyone who would try to destroy it for their own gain. The girl who died alone in a Brooklyn apartment, betrayed by everyone she trusted, has become a woman who protects others from suffering the same fate. That transformation, more than any amount of money or business success, is the true victory that makes my rebirth worthwhile.